Hey there everyone, Ramesh here, back again with another video. In this video, let's go ahead and let's discuss Java Lambda interview questions and answers. Well, as we know that Java Lambda expressions are very important in Java, and basically Lambda expressions were introduced in Java 8, and Lambda expressions facilitates a functional programming in Java. That's why Lambda expressions are very important to discuss in the interviews. Well, in this video, let's go and let's discuss few of the interview questions on Java Lambda expressions. Well, in interview, you may get a very first question like, what is functional interface? Well, basically we use a Lambda to implement a functional interface. That's why you may get a very first question like, what is functional interface? Well, functional interface were introduced in Java 8. Alright, and functional interface is nothing but an interface that contains exactly one abstract method is known as functional interface. Well, consider the code snippet here. My functional interface is an interface and it contains exactly one abstract method, that is execute method. Well, as we know that whenever we define a method in an interface, by default that method is abstract, right? So we don't have to again mention the abstract keyword in a method. Alright, so just remember, functional interface is an interface that contains exactly one abstract method. Alright, well, functional interface can have any number of default and static methods but can contain only one abstract method. Well, consider the code snippet again over here. Interface, my functional interface is a functional interface. It contains default and static methods, but it contains exactly one abstract method, that is execute method. Alright, so this is a valid functional interface. Alright, so functional interface is nothing but an interface that contains any number of static and default methods but contains exactly one abstract method. Well, interviewer may immediately ask you a question like, how we can create a functional interface? Well, we can use a Java 8 provided add functional interface annotation to mark an interface as a functional interface. Well, let's go and let's create one example. Well, here I am going to create one interface. Let's call it as my functional interface. Okay, and in order to make this interface as a functional interface, we have to define one abstract method. For example, let's say void print something like this, and I'm going to pass a parameter something like message. Okay, so this is nothing but our functional interface, because functional interface is an interface, it contains exactly one abstract method. Alright, perfect. Now in order to mark this interface as a functional interface, we can use add functional interface annotation from java.lang package. Well, basically this annotation were introduced in Java 8 to mark the interface as a functional interface. Well, if you know that this interface is going to be a functional interface, then you can ignore this annotation. Alright, otherwise if you want to explicitly mark this interface as a functional interface, then you can go ahead and use add functional interface annotation. And if you try to add another method, for example, let's say void display something like this, then this will give a compile time error, because you are here using add functional interface annotation to mark this interface as a functional interface, and functional interface is nothing but an interface, it contains exactly one abstract method, right? But here we are trying to add one more abstract method. Okay, we are totally added two abstract method. That's why it is giving a compile time error here, because functional interface contains exactly one abstract method, right? So let's go and let's remove this method, and now this is a valid functional interface because it contains exactly one abstract method. Well, functional interface can contain any number of default and static methods. For instance, let's say default void m1 is the method name, and default method contains a body, right? Let me put one sys out over here, and let's say default method. And functional interface can contain any number of static methods, right? Static void, let's say m2, and let's put one sys out, and let's say static method. Alright, perfect. Well, by looking into this functional interface, you can easily understand that functional interface is an interface, it can contain any number of default and static methods, but it should contain only one abstract method. and this is how we basically define our own functional interface. Alright, great. Well, let's take a look into the next question, that is, what is lambda expressions? Well, lambda expressions were introduced in Java 8. Lambda expression is an anonymous function. It means lambda expression don't have a name and it does not belong to any class or a object. And the main purpose of lambda expression is to implement functional interfaces. Alright, so let's understand more about lambda expression with an example. Well, let me head over to the IntelliJ IDEA and let me create a class over here, and let's say lambda example, and here I'm going to quickly create a functional interface. So just remember, the main use of lambda expression is to implement the functional interface. So let's go and let's first define the functional interface over here. Let's say the functional interface name is shape, and let's create one abstract method, let's say draw, and here we are not mentioning the abstract keyword because by default the method is abstract in a interface. And let's first see the traditional way to implement this functional interface. So let's create a class and let's give a class name as rectangle. So rectangle is a shape, right? So let's implement shape interface over here, and let's override the method, that is draw method, and let's provide the implementation. Well, to keep it simple, let me put one sysout over here and let me call it as rectangle draw method. Alright, perfect. So this is how basically we write a code using traditional way to implement a interface, right? So this is nothing but a method overriding. Okay, this is a basically oops polymorphism concept. Now let's go and let's convert this oops concept, that is polymorphism concept, into functional programming using lambda expression. Alright, so within this class let's create a main method, and now let's convert this code into a lambda expression. So pretty simple. So let me simply copy this method and paste it here. So this is my personal technique how I convert basically a method into lambda expression. So it is very useful, so just follow this step. So we'll get rid of this annotation, and we basically in Java we can assign a block of code to the variable using lambda expression. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign this block of code to the interface called shape interface. So shape is basically a functional interface, right? And we can assign a lambda expression to the functional interface variable. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign this block of code to the functional interface. Now let's go ahead and let's remove the unnecessary parts from this code to form a lambda expression. Well, here is a public. Well, public access modifier does not make sense with respect to the lambda expression, because lambda expression is not belong to any class or object, right? This public access modifier makes sense with respect to a method or instance variable, right? So get rid of this access modifier. And as we know that lambda expression is an anonymous function, so let's go ahead and let's remove this method name, because lambda expression is an anonymous function and it don't have any name, right? So let's get rid of this name. Well, what remains? Void. So void is basically a return type, isn't it? And in a lambda expression we don't have to mention the return type, because Java compiler will automatically infer the return type by looking into this method in a functional interface, right? So this abstract method has a return type void. So here we don't have to mention the void in a lambda expression, because Java compiler will automatically infer the return type of this lambda expression. Alright, so let's get rid of this return type. Okay, now in order to complete this lambda expression we have to provide a arrow symbol over here. Okay, and we need to provide a semicolon at the end of this lambda expression. Alright, and this is your lambda expression. It's pretty simple, right? So I hope you understood how to convert a method into lambda expression. And here you can see this lambda expression body contains exactly one statement. So we can also simplify this a bit. So here I am going to simply remove open and close curly braces, and this is how your lambda expression looks like. And in order to call this functional interface, we are going to call here draw method. Okay, now I am going to run this program and let's see how it works. And there we go, rectangle draw method. Okay, it means that we have successfully written a lambda expression for this shape functional interface, and we can simply get rid of this code. Okay, and if you can compare the code over here, we have written only 2 lines of code to implement this functional interface, but in a traditional way we need to write this much of code to implement this functional interface. But here Lambda expression reduces a lot of code here, isn't it? So this is how basically we use a Lambda expression to implement the functional interface. And just remember, Lambda expression is a anonymous function. It don't have any name and it does not belong to any class or a object. The next question is lambda versus method. Well, sometimes the beginner may confuse with a lambda and method. So you may get an interview question like, what is the difference between lambda and method? Well, method is always belong to a class or object in Java, whereas lambda does not belong to any class or a object. Alright, so whenever we create a method in Java, we should create within a class, right? On the other hand, lambda does not belong to any class or a method, isn't it? So lambda expression should be isolation to any class. And here you can see method contains these main parts. Method contains name, parameter list, body and return type. Well, consider the example over here, addition method. Addition is the method name, int is the return type, int a comma int b is the parameter list, and return a plus b is the method body. So this is how we define a method in a class. Now let's see how we can define the lambda expression. Well, lambda expression contains these main parts. Lambda expression basically don't have name because lambda expression is anonymous function, so we no need to mention a name in a lambda expression. And lambda expression can have a parameter list. Lambda expression has a body, and we don't have to mention the return type in a lambda expression because Java 8 compiler will automatically infer the return type of the lambda expression by checking into the code. For example, look at here, this is the lambda expression. It contains the parameter list and it contains the body, and we don't have to mention the return type and we don't have to mention the name for the lambda expression. Okay, so this is how the lambda expression looks like. Well, try to give an example whenever you get a question like what is difference between lambda and method. Well, let's take a look into the next question. Explain lambda expression syntax. Well, this question may be especially asked for the beginners because interviewer just want to check whether candidate is familiar with the lambda expression syntax or not. Okay, just try to try to write this syntax in a paper if you have paper and pen in your hand, and try to explain this syntax. Okay, so this syntax basically contains 3 parts. First part is lambda input parameter, second part is arrow, third part is lambda body. Well, the first part contains lambda input parameters and second part is arrow symbol. So this arrow symbol basically link the input parameters with the lambda body, and within a lambda body we can define single statement or multiple statements. Okay, so this is how the lambda expression syntax looks like. Well, let's take a look into the next question. Why to use lambda expression, or what is the benefit of using lambda expression? Well, as we know that lambda expressions were introduced in Java 8, and lambda expression facilitates a functional programming in Java. For example, if you can see the code snippet here, so this is how we use a oops concept to write the code. For example, here we have used a method overriding. It means it is a polymorphism concept, right? So we have created a class which implements shape interface, and we have overridden the method and we have provided the implementation. So this is how we write the code using oops concept. And here we have converted this oops concept into a functional programming using lambda expression. And if you can see, using lambda expression we have simplified a code a lot, right? Only 2 lines of code we have done the job of all this much of code, isn't it? So basically lambda expression facilitates functional programming in Java. So next is to provide the implementation of Java 8 functional interfaces. Well, the main use of lambda expression is to implement the functional interfaces. For example, again consider here, shape is the functional interface, right? Because it contains only one abstract method, and here we have used lambda expression to implement this functional interface. Okay, well, next is reduce lines of code. Well, consider the same example over here. By using traditional way or oops concept, we need to write this much of code to implement the interface, and by using lambda expression we need to write only 2 lines of code, right? So this is how basically lambda expression reduces the code. Next is passing behavior to the methods. Well, we can use a lambda expression to pass a behavior to the method. For example, here I will create one more method, something like private static void, and let's say method name something like print. Okay, and I want to pass a functional interface as a parameter over here, and here simply call the shape dot draw method. Okay, now let's see how to pass a lambda expression as a behavior or a parameter to this method. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this method call, and here I'm going to call this method, that is print method, and I'm going to pass a lambda expression for this method. Alright, so this is how basically we pass a lambda expression as a method parameter. Alright, so here we are assigning this lambda expression to this variable, and we are passing this variable as a method parameter to this method. And if we run this program, it should work. There we go, rectangle draw method. Alright, and here instead of assigning this lambda expression to this variable, we can directly pass this lambda expression as a behavior to this method. Okay, so this is how we write the lambda expression to simplify the things. Well, the next question is write a Java lambda expression to create a thread. Well, basically runnable interface in Java is a functional interface. So we can use a lambda expression to implement a runnable functional interface, and then we can create a thread, and then we can pass the lambda expression to the thread. Alright, so let me create an example and let me demonstrate how we can write a lambda expression to create a thread. Let me head over to the IntelliJ IDEA. Well, go to the package, right click on the package, new, and then choose Java class, and let's give class name as something like runnable lambda example, and hit enter. Now first we'll see how to write a code using traditional way, and then later we'll see how to write the same code using lambda expression. So here we'll create a class which implements runnable interface. Let's say thread demo class which implements runnable interface, and then simply override the run method over here. Just mouse over, click on implement methods, choose run method, and there we go. And to keep it simple, within the run method we'll put a sysout and just print run method called something like this. Okay, now go to the runnable lambda example class and then create a main method, and within a main method we are going to create an instance of thread class. So let's create object of thread here, and then pass object of thread demo. Okay, and then simply start the thread here. Okay, so this is how traditionally we create a thread object. Okay, we create a class, implements runnable interface, and then we override the run method and we provide the implementation for run method, and we create a thread instance here, and we pass the object of thread demo class, and then we start the thread. Okay, so this is how we create the thread using traditional way. Now let's go and let's see how to use a lambda expression to implement a runnable interface, and then we'll create a thread object. Okay, well, if we can go inside runnable interface source code, you can able to see runnable is a functional interface because runnable contains only one abstract method, that is run method. And if you can see, runnable interface is annotated with add functional interface annotation. It means runnable is a functional interface, and we can use a lambda expression to implement a runnable interface. Alright, so let's go back to our class, and here we're going to use a lambda expression to implement a runnable interface. Let's use a runnable functional interface reference variable to assign the lambda expression. So this is the syntax of the lambda expression, right? And simply put one sysout within a lambda expression body and just call it as run method called using lambda, something like this. Alright, and then we need to create instance of thread over here, thread, let's say lambda equal to new thread, and then pass runnable, and then simply start the thread. Perfect. So this is how basically we implement a runnable functional interface using lambda expression, and then we create a thread object, and then we pass a lambda expression implementation as a parameter to this constructor, and then we start the thread. Okay, so let me run the program and let me show you, and there we go. So this is working as expected. Well, we can simplify this lambda expression even more. If you can see here, lambda expression body contains only one statement, so we can get rid of this open and close curly braces over here. All right, perfect. And if you can see here, we can simply pass this lambda expression itself as a parameter to the constructor. For instance, I'm going to pass here, and I'm going to get rid of this statement. Okay, so this is how we can pass a lambda expression as a parameter to the constructor as well. If I run the program, it should work, and there we go. All right, so this is how basically we use a lambda expression to implement a runnable interface, and we pass that lambda expression to the thread object, and then we start the thread. All right, I hope you understood how to use a lambda expression to implement a runnable interface, and how to create a thread, and how to pass a lambda expression. All right, great. All right guys, these are the few basic interview questions on lambda expression. So if you are a beginner, then you should check out these interview questions on lambda expression. All right, great. I will see you in the next video.